Help give kids an extra life by donating today to help sick and injured children. Link in the description and pinned comment below.
Unlike you, I get my news from a reliable source. I only watch News Combo 7.
Capcom, the company that created the traditional 2D fighting game with the original Street Fighter, and then revolutionized and legitimized it with the release of Street Fighter 2. Over the course of the 90s and early 2000s, they would have many fighting franchises under their belt before solidifying the Street Fighter franchise as their premier titan of the genre. SNK, a company that had a revolution of their own, changing the arcade scene forever with the Neo Geo. While Capcom was developing Street Fighter 2, SNK would hire the creator of the original Street Fighter, who would design Fatal Fury, the first of many fighting games on the Neo Geo, leading up to their premier crossover franchise, the King of Fighters. For years, these two arcade titans would stake their claim in the history books. But as the clock prepared to turn toward a new millennium, an event happened that would shake the world. A crossover for the ages. A game that would answer the greatest question in the history of mankind. Who would win in a fight? So, how exactly did this crossover happen? Well, one story claims that it began with the cover of an issue of Gamist magazine, which had articles covering the King of Fighters 98 and Street Fighter Alpha 3, both highly anticipated games that were coming out around the same time. The cover headline? KOF vs. Street Fighter. Sounds like a new crossover game, huh? Well, allegedly a lot of readers thought the same thing and it caused quite a stir. Sometime after the issue hit shelves, Takashi Nishiyama of SNK reached out to Yoshiki Okamoto over at Capcom to basically say, hey, a lot of people like both of our stuff, and we can make a lot of money if we work together. Now, one thing you gotta realize is that SNK was in a bit of a bind at the time. The first 2D fighting game boom of the 90s was starting to wane, and that was what helped establish SNK as such a juggernaut. Long story short, this could make a company desperate. So, according to the story, SNK and Capcom struck a deal to produce some fighting games in 1999 using each other's assets. Whether or not this was due to the uproar of the magazine is still up for debate. Funny enough, their first collaboration was actually the SNK vs. Capcom Card Fighters Clash games on the Neo Geo Pocket Color. Then, in 1999, the first fighting game in this collaboration was released. SNK vs. Capcom, the match of the millennium for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. The Neo Geo Pocket was SNK's answer to the handheld empire that was the Game Boy. The original handheld was released in 1998, with the more famous Neo Geo Pocket Color released as a follow-up in the next year. What? I figured I'd cover all the fighting games in this project. So let's pop a quarter in the slot and start this baby up!
Wait, the Neo Geo Pocket Color doesn't have a coin slot.
Here's the sitch. Geese and Bison have struck a deal to use a fighting tournament as cover to lure in fighters so that they can use them to create an army in order to, you guessed it, take over the world.
Of course!
This game is hailed as one of the highlights of the Neo Geo Pocket Color, mainly because of how expansive it is. You have a roster of 26 characters from a wide range of series, from Street Fighter and the King of Fighters to Samurai Showdown, The Last Blade, and Darkstalkers. And you've got plenty of options. You can play solo best-of-3 fights like Street Fighter, tag team fights similar to Marvel vs. Capcom, or 3-member team battles in the vein of KOF. The gameplay does a great job of translating a KOF-style fighting game to the more limited controls of the Pocket Color, especially since SNK had adapted several of its franchises to the smaller platform before. More specifically, this game uses the engine from the King of Fighters R series, although a couple universal techniques from those games were omitted. There are also 3 different power-up styles. There's a Capcom-style multi-level super meter style, an SNK-style gauge which you can charge manually and includes a counter move, and a side neutral meter style which enhances super moves if full. So you've got a lot of possibilities for gameplay, especially when you factor in the minigames. Aside from traditional time attack and survival modes, the Olympic mode includes a group of minigames featuring other characters from both sides of the aisle. And these aren't just for show. You actually earn points from these special events that can be used to unlock hidden moves for each character, so you've got a reason to play these minigames besides just being a distraction. Overall, the Match of the Millennium is one of, if not the best game on the Neo Geo Pocket Color. And while physical copies in the wild aren't exactly common, particularly if you need the handheld, The game itself is available for download on modern platforms, so it's well worth checking out.
I mean, it's not like you're likely to find a Neo Geo Pocket Color out in public these days, right?
But that's not what you all came for, is it? Well, I've served you the appetizer, and now it's time for the main meal, the arcade games. And for the first course, we've got Capcom vs. SNK Millennium Fight 2000. Now, there's a bit of confusion on the naming conventions, but it basically boils down to the company developing and or hosting the game being the company named first in each title. CVS-1 was the third project in the collaboration between the two companies, being developed on the Dreamcast-based Naomi hardware, which hosted other titles such as Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Centered on a tournament sponsored by the Garcia Financial Group and the Masters Foundation, with Sinister Forces keeping an eye on things because it's obligatory, this is more like Street Fighter vs. KOF than even the previous title. The only characters that fell outside the purview of these two series and their components were Morrigan and Nakoruru, both hidden characters. There were two main components to the gameplay. First was the groove system. By choosing Capcom Groove or SNK Groove, you could choose which kind of superbar you had, as well as other universal techniques. The Capcom Groove was based on Street Fighter Alpha, being a 3-level meter which filled up based on your actions. The SNK Groove was more akin to KOF 95, being a meter which charged either manually or by taking damage. Once full, you'd enter max mode where you get a power-up and could use super moves, and you could also perform multiple super moves once your health hit critical. The second is the team construction. Each character has a set number of ratio points based on their perceived strength. You had 4 ratio points to build your team. No more, no less. The characters could take up anywhere from a single point to the maximum of 4, so you had to be strategic as to which characters you picked. Do you go with strength in numbers, or do you bet it all on the big guns? As for the actual fights, they play in an elimination style, similar to KOF. You have a Neo Geo style 4-button format with 2 punches and 2 kicks and your chosen groove. When one character is knocked out, it's next one up until the entire side is taken down. When you win a round, you gain a portion of your lost health back for the next opponent, and in the event of a timeout, whoever has less health is eliminated. Scoring in this game is pretty different from your usual fighting game. CVS introduced the concept of groove points. It's not enough to simply hit your opponent in these games. No, you're being judged on how you hit them. You start with 20 groove points, and every action, and even lack of action, will affect your total, both for better and for worse. Basic strikes and throws give you a minimal boost to your groove points, while more flashy hits, such as specials, supers, and counters, give you more groove points. And getting hit costs you groove points. Obviously, losing a character will cost you the most groove points, but if you're able to finish an enemy by countering with a special or super move, you'll accomplish a finest KO, which gives you a huge boost. Not only will high groove points give you a better score multiplier, but if you have high enough GP at certain points, you'll fight one of the game's hidden characters, those being Nakoruru, Morrigan, and Akuma. So, what was the response to this game? Largely positive in terms of gameplay and presentation. The graphics were great, especially for the backgrounds and the new sprites for the SNK characters. Most of the Capcom characters had carryover sprites from previous games, especially Morrigan, whose overuse of her original sprite became a meme over the years. As for the characters, that was the main complaint. While Match of the Millennium had a wide variety of games that characters came from, this game's roster was hot dog taco hamburger. Roster issues aside, this game was a great collaboration. And in August 2001, an updated version called Capcom vs. SNK Millennium Fight 2000 Pro was released, with several gameplay tweaks as well as 2 additional fighters. This would be the version to appear in Capcom Fighting Collection 2. And for the second course, we're serving up some tuna with bacon. Also in 2001, we'd see the second installment from the Capcom side of this crossover, Capcom vs. SNK 2 Mark of the Millennium 2001. Or if you prefer the Japanese title, Millionaire Fighting 2001. The Japanese arcade release of CVS-2 came in August of 2001, with Sega publishing the US arcade release a month later, and it's often hailed as one of the best crossover fighters ever. Let's start with the roster. The total lineup expanded from 35 characters to 48, including characters from The Last Blade, Final Fight, and even rival schools. Heck, they picked Kyosuke to not only be the rival school's rep, but also one of the cover characters of the game. The second major change to the game is the expansion of the groove system. Instead of 2 grooves, there are now 6, the C, A, and P grooves, and the S, N, and K grooves. These determined which kind of super meter you had, what manner of subsystem you could use, whether you could dash or run, and other important things which would take too long to explain. In the home versions of the game, you could even create your own custom groove using various components of the 6 main grooves. Next is the change in forming teams. Instead of each character being assigned a fixed ratio value, this game implemented the free ratio system. You could have up to 3 characters on a team, and you had 4 ratio points to assign to characters at the start of a single-player game or a versus match. So you could have one super strong character, one strong character and one weaker character, two average strength characters, or one average character and two weaker characters. And finally, CVS2 returned to Capcom's standard 6-button format. Groove points return as well, and while the classification of actions looks simpler, the system itself is more complex, though less punishing for beginners. And those groove points are just as important as ever, since they're likely to play a role in whether you get to fight the game's bosses. In order to fight either Geese or Bison as a mid-boss, you have to have gained at least 800 groove points, and won at least 2 matches with a customer super combo by the end of your 4th match, all while having suffered 5 first hits or less. Then, if you want to fight a boss, you must achieve at least 2 of the following by the end of the game. A. Have at least 1,000 groove points. B. Defeat Bison or Geese. C. Finish with at least 4 special KOs. Or D. Finish with at least 2 level 3 super combo finishers. Then, after the championship ceremony, you'll get a cutscene and face off with either Akuma or Rugal. That is, unless you accomplish 2 of the following. A. Have at least 1,500 groove points. B. Defeat Bison or Geese. Or C. Win with at least 1 finest KO. Do that by the last battle and you'll get a different cutscene and square off with either Shin Akuma or God Rugal. And apparently it's based on which groove you're using. Of course, you're probably going to get your kidneys kicked in either way. Capcom vs. SNK 2 is highly praised for the variety in its gameplay, which many people say was really well balanced, and the large roster of characters, which definitely had more variety than the first game. As for the presentation, the backgrounds were really well done, and the music was catchy as hell, though some of the character art reused sprites wasn't exactly up to snuff. While the game was ported to the major consoles at the time, one particular port had to make some compromises. The GameCube port. Dubbed Capcom vs. SNK 2 EO, this version had a special control option called GCism, where the analog L and R buttons were used for various punches and kicks, and the special moves were mapped to the C-stick. Or you could just try your hands at the more traditional ACism, but maybe porting this to the GameCube in the first place wasn't the best idea.
I mean, you look at this controller and tell me that it was made for traditional 2D fighting games.
So, how about a third course? Well, in an interview with Polygon in 2021, Hideaki Itsuno revealed that there were plans for a third CVS game in 3D, but unfortunately around that time, SNK fell victim to bankruptcy. So the assets were repurposed for Capcom Fighting All-Stars, which was also cancelled. Shame too. Kyo was planned to be a guest character after Capcom worked out a tentative deal with the reformed SNK Playmore in 2002. However, we did get one last crossover game out of the deal, SVC Chaos, SNK vs. Capcom for the Neo Geo, released in 2003 in arcades and later ported to home consoles. It has the visual style of the earlier KOF games and more basic gameplay, returning to the 4-button format since it was a Neo Geo game, and going from a team-based game to a basic one-on-one round-based fighter. There was also no groove select. Instead, it was a basic super meter with 3 levels. There are certain actions, besides super moves of course, that cost meter. Once you hit level 3, you'll enter maximum mode, allowing you to perform cancels anywhere, including super cancels, and perform meter actions until the gauge runs out, at which point you'll return to level 2 and have to regain meter as normally. And finally, there's a super desperation move called an Exceed attack, which can be used once per match, and only when you're down to red health. Be careful how you use it. As for the roster, there are 24 base characters, plus 12 hidden characters for a total of 36 in all. And while the base roster is, again, mainly from the respective company's bigger franchises with the exception of Tessa from Red Earth, the boss characters have quite a bit of variety as to where they come from. In the 4th battle, you'll face a mid-boss based on your performance. By default, you'll face either Danabiki or Ginitz from KOF 97. Pray that it stand, because Ginitz is as much of a cheap-ass as ever. If you win every single round and not time out, and you finish at least one round with an Exceed, you'll face either Dimitri from Darkstalkers or the infamous Geese Howard. And if you finish 3 rounds with an Exceed and not lose or time out a round, you'll face either the Mars people from Metal Slug or Zero in his Mega Man Zero form. And yes, Zero was OP even back then. In stages 7 and 8, the bosses you fight depend on the character you fought in stage 6. If it was a Capcom character, you face Orochi Iori followed by Serious Mr. Karate.
Neil! Hit the serious button!
If you fought an SNK character in stage 6, your stage 8 opponent is Shin Akuma, but before that, you face Violent Ken, who actually made his game debut in this title, long before appearing in Ultra Street Fighter 2, though it was based on a moment in the Street Fighter 2 animated movie. Of course, those bosses don't get you your ending. You gotta put in a bit more work with that. If you win your first 7 fights without losing a round and without winning a round through chip damage, you get taken to heaven to throw down with Athena. And I don't mean the psychic girl who KOF made famous, I mean the goddess from the obscure SNK arcade game. And if you win every round in your first 7 bouts, win at least 5 rounds with a special or super, and win at least 1 round through a chip out, you're spirited away to Makai to face Red Aramur. How appropriate! And not only are both super bosses insanely hard, but you only have 1 chance to beat them. And if you fail, not only do you not get the chance to continue, they'll add insult to injury by transforming your character. So you better be ready to work for that ending. Now, originally the game was met with criticism for its dull backgrounds and rough visuals overall, as well as the scaled-down gameplay. However, over time, more people started to warm up to it, and it's become something of a cult classic. And now that it's available on modern platforms, you've got the opportunity to make your own judgment.
Provided you're willing to shell out a Jackson plus Taction for it.
Well, following that game, there would be one final collaboration between Capcom and SNK, that being Card Fighters DS, but that game was not very well received. However, in 2009, former Street Fighter producer Yoshinori Ono expressed interest in a possible CVS3 if the fans demanded it. Of course, the final decision wouldn't be in his hands. But the spark would light again in August 2022, when SNK and Capcom artists Eisuke Ogura and Toshiaki Mori, better known as Shinkiro, created some promo art with both companies' characters to promote the first EVO since the pandemic. In subsequent interviews, SNK producer Yasuyuki Oda went on to say that the promotional art opened the door for the possibility of another collaboration, and that both Capcom and SNK were open to the idea. The chances of a revival came that much closer in 2024, when it was announced at Summer Game Fest that Terry and Mai would be appearing in Street Fighter VI, and later that year at Tokyo Game Show it was revealed that Ken and Chun-Li would be appearing in Fatal Fury City of the Wolves as DLC. And that's on top of Capcom Fighting Collection 2, which contains both Capcom vs SNK games. And while there would be hurdles to overcome, both Oda and Capcom producer Shuhei Matsumoto are very aware of the fan interest, so there's definitely a chance that one day we could see a new Millennium rise again.
And given that it would be a crossover game, there's less of a chance that we'd see any controversial real-world figures in the game on the demands of a certain someone. Popular fictional characters tend to create more hype than real-world ones. Also, #FreeSNK. I'm the Quarter Guy, and until next time, the arcade is closed.
Hey everyone, QG here. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Feel free to check me out on Blue Sky and Tumblr, as well as my live streams on Twitch. If you want to support my channel, you can become a channel member or check out my Patreon, and don't forget about my Extra Life campaign supporting Children's Wisconsin. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time!